Welcome to video 6 in this mini-series of presentations where we will be focusing on models of critical thinking. Now, in this session, we will briefly explore 3 approaches to critical thinking that should help you critically analyse the literature that you read. These approaches are Tom Chatfield's approach to critical thinking, the University of Leeds critical thinking approach, and Stella Cottrell's critical thinking. At the end of the session, I have included a reference list to enable you to find each of these approaches to critical thinking if you wish. Now, Tom Chatfield's approach to critical reading will allow you to take the article details, a brief synopsis, the author's conclusion, the reasoning that may be involved in the paper, the evidence that may be there, will allow you to include your analysis, any follow-up questions that you may have, and it prompts you to take direct quotations that you may want to use in any written work that you are doing. Now, under the synopsis, you want to ask what topic is being addressed, what is the article about, why is this relevant to your work. Then the conclusion, what is the author's overall argument, and what is the main conclusion that they have made in that piece of work. When we look at the reasoning, you want to be able to break down the reasoning that the author has used. Maybe also ask which reasons are implicit and which are explicit. Does the reasoning rely on intermediate conclusions? Are the reasons related or separate? Now, when we're looking at the evidence, initially you want to ask what evidence does the author use, and then you go through this in a step-by-step way and ask, is the evidence relevant, like we've covered in previous videos? Is it representative? Does it effectively support the argument? And is this the only way it might be interpreted? Under the analysis section of Tom Chatfield's approach, we can ask questions such as, how convincing is the argument? Is the evidence convincing? Is the reasoning convincing? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the argument? And then finally, are there any obvious gaps that may be in that piece of work? Then we have the follow-up, and initially you want to think about what type of follow-up questions you may want to investigate once you finish reading. How might you make use of this source, and what more information might you need to help you write an assignment with the information that you're reading? And then here, the final point is the quotations. Now, the quotations can be entirely chosen by yourself, but what you want to do is include any direct quotations you might want to use in your work at a later date. Now, it is really important though to be selective. You don't want to keep on writing down lots and lots and lots of quotations, because it then becomes time consuming once you go back to those quotations to include them in your work. We then have the University of Leeds approach, which has 3 main areas. These are description, analysis, and evaluation. So under description, we're going to answer questions such as who wrote this, what is it about, when was it written, what is the main aim of the article. Once you've answered these questions, we then move on to analysis. And under the analysis section, we'll answer questions such as how was the research conducted? Why are these theories discussed? What are the alternative methods and theories? So it's allowing you to be critical just by answering the questions that are in the model itself. And they may not be questions that you think of if you are not using a type of critical thinking model or approach. Now, under the evaluation section, we then answer questions such as what do I think about this? How is this relevant to my assignment? How does this compare to other research I have read? And that final question can really help you to decide whether you can synthesize research, so a number of papers are saying the same thing, or whether there's research that is contradictory. And this will allow you to be critical in the assignments that you're writing, because you're going to be able to compare and contrast and then explore why there are differences within the research itself. And the final approach is Stella Cottrell's approach. Now, run through the questions very, very briefly. The first one, what is the main line of reasoning? So again, we're asking that reasoning question. Also, what is the main thesis or argument that's in the piece of writing? Is the line of reasoning clear, both in the introduction and conclusion? What is the key evidence used to support the line of argument? Is the evidence presented in a way that clearly develops the argument and leads clearly to a conclusion? When was the evidence produced? Is it up to date? Is it relevant? You may get a research article that is been published before 2000, the year 2000, but is still relevant. But you may also get an article that's published in 2010 that is not still relevant. So it's really up to you and in what you're writing to make those decisions to be really critical in those situations. And there's some more questions to answer. Is there sufficient evidence to prove the case? Is the evidence relevant? What might be missing? What, if any, would have been a better order in which to present the evidence to strengthen the line of reasoning? Are there any examples of flawed reasoning? Are there attempts to persuade the reader through an appeal to emotions? Is evidence interpreted and used correctly? Okay, so here in these questions we're starting to open up on those. Is the evidence relevant, like we've covered previously? Are there any fallacies or flawed critical thinking? And then finally, has the writer given sufficient considerations to alternative points of view? And in this question, you can give examples if you would like to. And it's always good to look out for that final question, because if there are not alternative points of view that have been presented in that research paper, then quite possibly could be bias within the way that that has been written, and it's really important to look out for that. And finally, here are the references to the 3 critical thinking approaches. You've got the Tom Chatfield reference at the top, then Stella Cottrell's referenced, and the University of Leeds critical thinking reference at the bottom. You may wish to use these to start off with in the new academic year, but once you get familiar with the critical thinking method that you use, you can then usually read papers without having to look at the model over and over again.